TLS, or Transport Layer Security, is the protocol that secures the entire internet. That little padlock that you're told to look for to ensure that your connection is secure? Yeah, that's TLS. It's also sometimes called SSL, but no one really uses SSL as a protocol anymore. That's the name of the earlier versions of TLS. Now, I've talked about SSL and TLS in other videos on my channel, so if you want more background or context, feel free to check out those videos. In this video, I want to talk about the newest version of SSL, and that is TLS version 1.3. As of today, about 60% of websites out there support TLS version 1.3. But how do you know if the website you're visiting right now is using the newest version of SSL? Well, let me show you. To check to see what version of TLS you're using, you used to be able to click on this padlock and see it right here. Now, all you get to see is that the connection is secure. So that's an indication that you are using some version of TLS and SSL. To see the actual version that you're using, you'll have to go over into the extra settings menu and then more tools and then developer tools. You'll get a window that looks like this. And then from here, click on the security tab. And this is what tells you that when you're visiting this particular website, your connection is secured with TLS 1.3. Despite TLS being used pretty much everywhere, not everyone is aware that TLS changed pretty drastically in 2018 when they released the latest version, version 1.3. In order to bring more attention to the changes and improvements with TLS version 1.3, I've decided to make a few lessons from my Practical TLS course free in order to bring more awareness to what is different. So what follows is an overview of some of the changes in TLS version 1.3, as well as an introduction to the next few videos in the series where I talk about each of those changes in more detail. I'll be releasing a few more of these lessons over the next few weeks, so if you're interested in this type of content, please consider subscribing. Also, I'm giving away free enrollments to the course to a few lucky individuals. There are details about that in the pinned comment. Otherwise, enjoy the free lesson courtesy of Practical TLS. Welcome to the first lesson of the TLS 1.3 module of the Practical TLS course. In this lesson, we're going to be looking at an overview of some of the changes that TLS 1.3 brings about. TLS 1.3 is actually a major overhaul from the versions of TLS prior. TLS 1.3 came out in 2018. It was ratified in RFC 8446. A lot of lessons that we've learned about doing security in the 25 plus years that we've been doing security were taken and incorporated into TLS 1.3. And a lot of those changes aren't just things we've learned from SSL and TLS. We also were able to incorporate things we learned from SSH and things we learned from IPsec for the last 25 years into TLS 1.3. Now, to truly understand TLS 1.3, you have to understand TLS 1.2 and prior. A lot of the whys for how things work in TLS 1.3 occur as a result of how things worked in TLS versions prior. So to really understand what's happening in TLS 1.3, you do have to understand TLS 1.2 and prior. Lucky for you, if you've come to this lesson in this course, you've already gone through 6 modules where we unpacked TLS 1.2 in great detail. And despite TLS 1.3 being a major overhaul from the versions of TLS prior, not everything has changed. In Module 1, we went through an overview of SSL. We talked to you about what is required to secure data. We said we needed confidentiality, integrity, and authentication, and all of that still applies. In Module 2, we talked about cryptography. We unpacked symmetric encryption and hashing and HMAX and asymmetric encryption and RSA and Diffie-Hellman. All of that still applies. Nothing in the crypto module changes. In Module 3, we talked about certificates and keys. Nothing in X509 changes. The same certificate you used in TLS 1.2 and prior still apply in TLS 1.3. And everything we learned about what's inside a certificate also still apply. Then in Module 4, we talked about the security you can get from certificates. That's where we unpacked certificate verification, certificate validation, certificate types, DV, and OV, and EV certificates. All of that still applies in TLS 1.3. Nothing there changes. The first set of changes from what we've talked about so far really apply in Module 5. And there's not actually all that much that changes in Module 5. Everything we unpacked about how symmetric encryption works and stream ciphers versus block ciphers and HMAX, all of that still applies. The only thing really that changes is the definition of what a cipher suite is changes in TLS 1.3, and don't worry, we'll be exploring that shortly. Finally, that brings us to Module 6, and this is actually where most of the changes in TLS 1.3 exist. So you'll see 90% of everything you've learned so far, 100% still applies to TLS 1.3. Really, what TLS 1.3 does is it creates a new way to do a TLS handshake, which means a client and a server have a new set of messages that they're sending to each other in order to negotiate a TLS session. A lot, again, of TLS 1.2 is still going to happen. The sessions are still going to start with a client hello and a server hello. But after that, most of the TLS handshake changes. And don't worry, we'll be exploring all of that throughout this module. For now, I just wanted to highlight that TLS.3 does change a lot, but not so much as to invalidate most of what you've learned in this course. With that in mind, the major paradigm shift that TLS 1.3 brings about is this one. TLS 1.3 favors simplicity and security over backwards compatibility. That's different from prior versions of TLS, where a lot of the things we implemented in TLS 1.2 was for the sake of backwards compatibility with older versions of the protocol. You'll see that with TLS 1.3, if there was a feature that prioritized backwards compatibility over security, that feature was removed. Keep this mantra in mind as we go through all the changes that TLS 1.3 brings about. And here is the full list of all the major significant changes with TLS 1.3. As you can see, there's a lot of them. There's 20 total bullet items on your screen right now. And all of them fall within this mantra. To simplify how we're going to talk through these, I've somewhat arbitrarily categorized these into 4 different groups. And we'll use these to simplify how we're going to talk through each of them in somewhat sensible logical partitions. The first group that we're going to talk through refer to changes with TLS 1.3 that relate to cipher suites. The second group is changes to TLS 1.3 that relate to the TLS handshake. The third group is changes to session renegotiation. And finally, the fourth group is changes to session resumption. What you've just watched is lesson 1 of the TLS 1.3 module, and what you're looking at on your screen is lesson 2, 3, 4, and 5. So that's it for the first lesson in the TLS 1.3 module. The main takeaways are that TLS 1.3 is a major overhaul to the versions of TLS prior, focusing on simplicity and security over backwards compatibility. Despite how many changes occur in TLS 1.3, most of what you've learned in this course will absolutely still apply. In the next few lessons, we'll be looking at each of these 20 changes in more detail. But that's it for this lesson. I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next one. Hey YouTube, if you enjoyed that lesson, then you'll also enjoy the full course that it came from, Practical TLS. It's a deep dive into SSL and TLS, taught methodically and intentionally, full of easy illustrations and in the simplest way possible. You'll get to learn cryptography, certificates, private keys, the handshake, OpenSSL, and everything you need to become an SSL expert. To learn more, check out pracnet.net/TLS, and if you need more convincing that this is the best TLS training course, then check out the other free lesson previews on YouTube. Thank you and have a great day.